San Diego is famous for endless sunshine and pristine beaches, but a dark, multi-billion-dollar secret is hiding in plain sight. Despite a staggering $4 billion budget aimed at fixing the problem, the streets are transforming into sprawling encampments. While the national government funnels billions into foreign wars and overseas crises, one of America's wealthiest coastal cities is collapsing under the weight of a humanitarian disaster. With crime surging to a 20-year high and political corruption funneling public funds to luxury developers, a terrifying question emerges. How did paradise become a nightmare, and who is profiting from the collapse? The collapse of America's finest city, San Diego City, has long been marketed as a coastal utopia. It is a place of vibrant culture, perfect weather, and booming tourism. But beneath that postcard-perfect surface lies a crisis of unimaginable scale, a crisis that is rapidly eroding the city's famed image. Homelessness is no longer just an issue in San Diego, it has become an epidemic. By 2025, the number of people experiencing homelessness in the city surged by an astonishing 32% in a single year, climbing to a staggering 107,358 individuals. To put that into perspective, that is a 50% increase since 2013. But it's not just the sheer number of people on the streets that should shock you, it is how they are living. San Diego now holds an unenviable and tragic distinction. It has the highest percentage of unsheltered homeless individuals in the entire nation. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, nearly 70% of the city's homeless population lives entirely without basic shelter. That represents a massive 39% spike since just 2020. Imagine walking down the street and knowing that 7 out of every 10 homeless individuals you see have absolutely no roof over their heads. They are surviving in cars, huddled on park benches, or seeking refuge in makeshift tent cities that line the sidewalks. The problem bleeds far past the city limits, too. Across the broader San Diego County, an estimated 120,225 individuals experienced homelessness on any given night in recent counts. This is no longer just a crisis of housing. This is a crisis of humanity. But to understand why this is happening, you first have to look at the massive elephant in the room and the glaring contradiction of American spending. The global paradox: funding wars while cities decay. There is a bitter irony echoing through the streets of San Diego, and it is a frustration felt by taxpayers across the country. As the homeless population swells to apocalyptic levels, the United States government continues to authorize hundreds of billions of dollars to fund foreign wars and manage overseas crises. Citizens are forced to watch as endless streams of capital are exported across the globe to rebuild foreign infrastructure, supply military operations, and stabilize other nations. Yet, back at home, major American cities are looking increasingly like war zones themselves. How does a superpower find the limitless resources to fund conflicts thousands of miles away, but cannot figure out how to put a roof over the heads of 107,000 desperate people in one of its most prominent cities? The disconnect is staggering. American tax dollars are being diverted to the global stage while domestic social safety nets completely unravel. For the residents of San Diego, navigating around sprawling encampments, dodging open-air drug markets, and paying some of the highest taxes in the country, the message from the top seems clear. The crises abroad take priority over the collapse at home. But even when the money does stay local, the results are deeply disturbing. Prepare yourself, because the financial reality of San Diego's homeless crisis is about to make you question everything you thought you knew about local government. The billion-dollar black hole San Diego City has become the ultimate case study in the national conversation about homelessness, not just because of the scale of the human suffering, but because of the sheer mountain of cash being thrown at it. In 2020, the city made headlines by allocating an unprecedented $3 billion to address homelessness. By 2022, that spending had surpassed $4 billion. And for the fiscal year 2024, the Department of Homeless Services proposed an eye-watering $4.8 billion budget. With that much money, you would expect to see the streets cleared, world-class rehabilitation centers built, and families securely housed. Instead, the problem has only exploded. So, where exactly is all this money going? Let's break down the math. To shelter a single adult in San Diego, the city spends over $42,052 every single year. For a family, that figure skyrockets to a jaw-dropping $95,408 annually. Think about those numbers. For nearly 6 figures a year, a family could theoretically rent a luxury apartment, hire private tutors, and have groceries delivered weekly. Instead, that massive sum is being absorbed by a bloated bureaucratic machine, while the very people it is supposed to help are still sleeping in damp tents under freeway overpasses. Recent audits have blown the lid off this system, revealing catastrophic gaps in tracking the success of these programs. The city is pouring billions into a black hole, and the investments are largely failing to transition people into permanent, stable housing. But incompetence is only part of the story. The other part? Pure, unadulterated corruption. Political corruption, profit over people. You cannot talk about the homeless crisis in San Diego without talking about the political corruption that fuels it. These two issues are deeply intertwined. When corruption dictates policy, taxpayer dollars get diverted away from essential services, leaving the most vulnerable populations to fend for themselves. In 2021, San Diego officials stood before the public and pledged $215 million specifically for affordable housing projects. It sounded like a victory for the working class. But investigative reports later revealed a shocking betrayal. Significant portions of these funds were quietly diverted to politically connected developers. Their mandate? To build luxury developments under the incredibly loose guise of mixed-income housing. These projects consistently failed to include any meaningful number of affordable housing units, completely abandoning the homeless population while padding the pockets of elite developers. And it gets worse. Audits uncovered that a massive $110 million allocation intended for an emergency homeless shelter was suddenly reallocated. Where did it go? To beautify a downtown business district. This move directly benefited wealthy property owners and corporate interests while blatantly ignoring the life or death needs of the people sleeping on the pavement just blocks away. San Diego's political landscape is heavily controlled by powerful lobbying groups representing the real estate and tourism industries. Historically, these entities have fiercely opposed measures like rent control and inclusionary zoning, policies that could actually stabilize housing costs and prevent people from losing their homes. When you look at the campaign finance records, you find that city council members and mayoral candidates have received massive contributions from these exact groups. It begs the question, are the city's leaders actually trying to solve the homeless crisis, or is the crisis just too profitable to fix? The forgotten victims, chronic decline, and lost childhoods. While the politicians and developers balance their ledgers, the human toll is quietly multiplying. One of the most terrifying trends in San Diego is the explosion of chronic homelessness. Back in 2018, about 14,358 individuals were classified as chronically homeless, meaning they had been on the streets for an extended period, often battling severe, overlapping issues. By 2025, that number skyrocketed to an estimated 42,681 individuals, now making up 35% of the total homeless population. This is a long-term battle for survival. These are people crushed by mental health struggles, severe substance abuse disorders, and systemic barriers that make re-entering society feel impossible. But perhaps the most heartbreaking reality of this crisis involves the youngest residents of San Diego. According to the Office of Homeless Youth, nearly 29,000 children experience homelessness annually in the city. For these kids, there is no stability. Their education is constantly disrupted, their cognitive and emotional development is hampered, and the trauma of extreme poverty casts a long, dark shadow over their futures. We are watching generational trauma being baked into the city's foundation in real time. When you push tens of thousands of people into a corner where they cannot afford to live, they are forced into survival mode. And when an entire city goes into survival mode, the streets become incredibly dangerous. The breaking point: crime and the underground economy. Will homelessness ruin San Diego City? If you look at the data, the city's social fabric is already tearing apart. Homelessness, unchecked immigration challenges, skyrocketing living costs, and surging crime rates are creating a highly volatile powder keg environment. Homelessness fundamentally reflects a failure in our social safety nets. But when people are stripped of basic necessities, many turn to the underground economy and sometimes crime just to survive. This creates a vicious cycle of instability. When you isolate San Diego City's crime data from the rest of California, a terrifying pattern emerges. According to Neighborhood Scout, over 95% of communities in California have lower crime rates than San Diego City. The San Diego Police Department reported a 15% spike in crime in 2023, culminating in over 100,000 reported incidents. That equates to a staggering crime rate of 35.4 incidents per 1,000 residents, placing San Diego among the most crime-ridden cities in the United States. Violent crime has hit a 20-year peak with 1,106 crimes per 100,000 residents. Property crimes have climbed to 1,800 per 100,000 residents. If you live in San Diego, you now face a 1 in 26 chance of falling victim to a violent or property crime. And operating just beneath the surface of this chaos is a deeply rooted gang epidemic. Despite the sunny, tourist-friendly exterior, San Diego is home to an estimated 191,000 gang members spread across 102 documented gangs. This is essentially a private army operating within city limits. Consider a working-class family living in southeastern neighborhoods like Logan Heights or Encanto. The parents work multiple jobs just to keep a roof over their heads, but their efforts are constantly undermined by the shadow of gang violence. Gunfire is a regular background noise. Gang graffiti marks their daily commute. Their children are growing up in an environment where violence is completely normalized, straining local schools and severely impacting their mental health. Priced out of paradise, the cost of living crisis. So, how did so many people end up on the edge of the abyss in the first place? The answer lies in a cost of living crisis that has spiraled entirely out of control. Housing is the single largest expense for residents, and the barrier to entry has become impenetrable. As of 2025, the median home price in San Diego sits at approximately $950,000 and more than double the national median. If you want to rent a standard one-bedroom apartment, expect to hand over more than $2,900 a month. This nightmare is driven by restrictive zoning laws, bureaucratic hurdles, and a massive demographic shift. In recent years, San Diego has become a primary destination for refugees and undocumented immigrants. As of 2023, the county is home to approximately 215,300 undocumented individuals, up from just 9,000 in 2005. While these individuals are seeking safety and opportunity, this massive influx places an unprecedented strain on an already suffocating housing market. Even if you can afford the rent, the everyday expenses will bleed you dry. Groceries in San Diego are about 13% more expensive than the national average. A mid-range dinner out will cost $30 to $40 per person. Childcare has become a luxury item, ranging from $1,800 to $3,000 per month per child, ranking among the highest in the entire nation. Utilities are skyrocketing as residents try to keep cool during the brutal summer months. Middle and lower income families are being aggressively priced out of paradise. Critical workers, teachers, nurses, and public safety officers can no longer afford to live in the communities they serve. The verdict on America's finest city. San Diego is a city at war with itself. It is a place of breathtaking natural beauty and immense wealth, yet it is crippled by corruption, surging crime, an unlivable housing market, and a homelessness crisis that is destroying lives by the tens of thousands. While billions of American tax dollars are shipped overseas to fund foreign conflicts, the streets of San Diego serve as a grim reminder of what happens when a nation abandons its own people. Solving this crisis will require more than just throwing billions of dollars into broken, corrupt systems. It requires total transparency, aggressive housing reform, and a government that actually prioritizes the survival of its citizens over the profit margins of political elites. If San Diego cannot balance its allure with actual affordability and safety, the finest city in America will become nothing more than a cautionary tale.